walks away after winning his 100th game as the head coach here at Notre Dame.
The reason I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was born in this country. It isn't what you have, it's what you're taught about the values of life.
We trying to save souls.
So there's a rule in life that said you're either growing or you're dying. And like an old friend once said, we as Americans need to start winning again.
Everyone should ask this question. Am I willing to endure the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice it takes to be a champion?
Welcome to the Lou Holtz podcast. For you that watch this quite often, you know, it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or any combination in between. It's all about what made this country great and how do we restore those values. Tonight we're really blessed to have Chad Robichaux. Chad has dedicated his life to serving others. A former Air Force Recon Marine and DoD contractor, Chad served 8 deployments to Afghanistan. Beyond the military, Chad served as a special agent with the U.S. Federal Air Marshal, served at U.S. State Department surveillance. Chad led a team to successfully evacuate 17,000 American allies and vulnerable individuals trapped in Afghanistan, was awarded the Medal of Valor. He also established the Mighty Oath, which has provided faith-based resilience and recovery programs to over 500,000 individuals. He's a best-selling author of several books. Saving Isaac, soon to be a major motion picture. He's the chairman of White House Veteran Coalition and has given testimony and advised presidential administration and Congress. Trained the VA and Department of Defense. Goes around the world on speaking tours. He's quite an individual. So, ladies and gentlemen, help welcome Chad Robichaux to the program.
Thank you, sir.
We're delighted to have you. Chad, you were a Marine, an MMA fighter, a philanthropic, and much more. I want to start by hearing about your upbringing. Things weren't always great in your family. What was it like growing up?
I grew up in very southern Louisiana. I think I grew up in, I would say, looking back now, very, very poor conditions. But at the time, I didn't know we were poor. It's just kind of how I grew up. And but I came from a family of 80, at this time, over 80 years of service, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. And, you know, me and my sons, both Marines, both my sons are Marines, and one of them served in Afghanistan as well, and I did 8+ Afghanistan, so long military service in our family. But my father was being a Vietnam veteran and not getting the help he needed, led me to grow up in a very dysfunctional home, and that really put a seed inside of me to join the military, to have a kind of a fresh start in life, and at a very young age, and I decided at 13 years old I wanted to be a reconnaissance Marine and go into special operations, and pursued that goal, and eventually achieved it.
Well, you know, it's really amazing, right? Our background is so different, but yet somewhere our background formulates what happens to us. Now, your journey from an MMA champion is quite unique. Can you share what motivated you to transition from military service to professional sports? That's not easy. It's unusual. What motivated this, to cause this to happen, Rob?
Well, it wasn't, for me, it wasn't a shift. It was something that was almost parallel at many times in my life. I started martial arts when I was 5 years old. I started doing grappling-based martial arts, wrestling, judo, Japanese jiu-jitsu. And, I'm 48 now, so I've been on the mats wrestling for 43 years. When I went in the military, it was something I'd already did my whole life. And so I continued to do it on the side while I was in the military. And at one point, I had the opportunity to fight professionally while I was still in the military, and the military allowed me to do that.
In addition to being a lifelong martial artist, I spent most of my adult life as a federal agent in the military special forces. My overseas combat experience has impacted my outlook on life and on fighting. Stepping in the cage to me is a sport. It's a game with referees, rules, and time limits. Most guys lose composure here, where I feel I rise to the occasion, giving me a competitive edge. One of the things I love about mixed martial arts in the sport as it is today is it gives martial artists like myself the opportunity to go out and compete.
And so after I came back from my 8th and last deployment from Afghanistan and was really struggling with anxiety, depression, PTSD, just really in a dark place, sports was a place that I felt I could get back focused and grounded again. So I dove into that, and that allowed me to transition out of coming back from Afghanistan into high level professional fighting. And so really quickly, because I already had that background, I was able to make a transition very easily. Within about 2 years of being out of the back from my last deployment, I was ranked number 6 in the world. I won a world title, and and that sport was a really healthy thing for me, but it was also a really not healthy thing for me. And the fact that I used it as a kind of a crutch, but I never actually got well. So it's kind of a paradox of something that was really good for me, and I really enjoyed it. I'm very proud of it, but it's also something that delayed me from getting well for quite some time also.
But who in your family really encouraged you the most when it come to MMA fighter?
My sons. I started training my sons as soon as they could walk, and so they went from being my kids that I coached and taught, and I coached their wrestling teams and taught them Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they ended up eventually being my training partners, and so they still train to this day. In fact, just last night I went to Jiu-Jitsu training with my oldest son Hunter, we're both black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and trained. So they were always inspiration to me, and I think I was to them, and it was something we did together.
In addition to your experience as a Marine and a fighter, you may be most known for your rescue mission in Afghanistan, which led to the evacuation of over 17,000 people from the hands of the Taliban. What motivated you to do that, to take your sons and to expand on how these missions went well beyond what you originally planned on? That's the way it was. This turned out to be much bigger than you thought when you first started it. What caused that?
Well, when I watched President Biden make the announcement of the withdrawal of Afghanistan, which we all knew he was going to do that, I had a very difficult time processing that because I didn't believe it was genuine. I believed that the American people were lied to and told that we were pulling out of this endless war, by the way, which we had won long ago in the war on terror. And I'll even say to President Trump, he should have declared a victory and hadn't. But to pull our troops out of Afghanistan was a catastrophic mistake, and a decision I don't believe was actually a mistake by the Biden administration. I think they chose to do it knowing the consequences, leaving Americans behind, leaving billions of dollars in equipment behind. Leaving our allies behind, leaving 40 million Afghans and 20 million women and little girls to be sexually enslaved. I was not okay with that, but I don't have a say-so in those type of matters. But one thing I did have a say-so was me personally leaving my friend and interpreter, Aziz, behind. Aziz served with me in all 8 of my deployments. I had a very unique job in Afghanistan. I worked in a kind of somewhat undercover capacity, clandestine operations, to where I worked alone with Aziz and not only operated with him, but lived with him. I lived in his home. I ate dinner with his family. I played soccer with his kids. I held his babies when they were born. Like, he's my friend, and we did all 8 of my deployments together. Aziz had saved my life before. And so I felt I had a life debt to go get Aziz and his wife and 6 kids out of Afghanistan during the withdrawal. And so I began to put a small team together to do that, to go get Aziz, his wife, and 6 kids.
Aziz and I worked together for 8 deployments. He was street smart, highly vetted, and trained to work with us. We spent days, weeks, months together at times, just the 2 of us, in the mountains of Afghanistan, across the border into Pakistan, in very non-permissive environments where other military was not around. And so Aziz was not only my interpreter, but he was my teammate, and he ultimately became my friend.
Thankfully, I have a lot of great friends, and the people I had were very highly qualified special operators and government agents. And we had a small team of 12 people, and we quickly realized that we could do a lot more than just helping Aziz and his family, and God orchestrated it.
We had got Aziz on his 8th attempt. It was his 8th attempt to get through the airport. The PJ, and they came out the wire and was able to get Aziz inside the airport.
20 pounds of explosives on the bomb.
A suicide bomber drove into the Abbey Gate, killed 13 of our service members, killed 160 others. The military was forced to weld the gate shut, and evacuations ended. At that point, we had got 12,000 people out. We chose to stay for another 2 months. That ended with about 17,000 people out. All the thousands of people we have here is because, we came to get him. And he's actually already taken charge and in charge of the entire process.
We know you have a new book, Mission Without Borders. This book shares the stories of you in Ukraine and involves your sons who were also in the military and how your faith in God grew while you were there. What is one takeaway you can share with our audience about the book to our listeners?
Well, Mission Without Borders is not just about Ukraine. It's about me and my son, who's a Marine combat veteran, going into the same war together, and me making a decision to do that. The takeaway from it, I think the biggest takeaway from the book is, just like I was a father in fear and trying to control my son, by not bringing him to war, we all, as everyone who's parents or everyone that loves someone, wants to control those circumstances. And so the biggest lesson I took away from this book and writing this book and the experiences from it was, as much as I loved my son Hunter, I had to realize that God loved him more. And as much as I could protect my son Hunter, I had to recognize that God could protect him more. And I had to make the decision to not be someone that would stop him from doing the things that God was burdening his heart for, and come alongside of him and support him into doing the work that he felt called to do and helping those people in Ukraine, those innocent civilians in Ukraine. And it was a realization for me. The lesson was a realization for me that my son could be killed on his couch in Texas, or he could be killed in the front lines of Ukraine, but there's no safer place for him to be than in the will of God. And he really felt burdened to go help. And so I had to bring him, go from not wanting him to be there to letting him actually lead operations in Ukraine. And now he's led over 13 of them.
Very well put. You're an experienced soldier, having served eight deployments overseas and several rescue missions as a civilian. So you know as good as anybody a person's mind and how important it is. What aspect of military life caused this? In other words, because it's so much about the way we think and the way we react to the problems. And your story is amazing. But what really formulated that in your mind?
But I think two things. One is that I've been given a second chance. When I came home from Afghanistan and my last deployment, and had lost so much and lost friends and lost I felt like I lost my soul and my mind. I lost all these things, and God completely restored all those things and gave me a second chance at life. And so I believe I have a obligation to use this second half of my life to do the most good that I could do. And secondly, I believe anyone, not just me, if God gives you gifts and talents and resources and opens doors for you to be able to serve, that's really what our life is about. Our life is not about us. So often we think inwardly, we think the world revolves around us and we're the center of our own universe. But the truth is that it's not about us. It's about others. And if we have these gifts and talents and skills and burdens in our heart to do things, then that's what we should do. And so over the last few years, I think with that perspective, with that mindset, God's allowed me the opportunity to be part of using the gifts and talents He's given me to help others. And just so happens for me that comes in the world of rescue operations and building programs to help our service members and first responders at our Mighty Oaks Foundation, and just doing these great things that I've been able to be part of. And I can tell you from someone that has lived a selfless life before, that has nothing been more rewarding than living a selfless life and serving others.
Well, it's a prime example of the famous saying, when much is given, much is expected. You've been open about your struggles with PTSD, anxiety, and depression, how those impacted on your life. Tell us about that and the advice you give to veterans dealing with similar issues, because we all have the same issues for people that are in combat.
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, when I came home from my 8th and last deployment, I was diagnosed with PTSD. I dealt with debilitating panic attacks, anxiety, depression, and I almost lost my family. And I had a very real battle with taking my life. And for those that listening and know, we have over 20 of our service members every single day that reach a point of hopelessness that they take their lives. And so my restoration came through me after about 3-year downward struggle of me having some amazing people come around me, leading me to a relationship with Jesus, becoming a Christian, and ultimately finding purpose with a deep burden on my heart to pay it forward and share the lessons I learned and the recovery I experienced with others. That manifested in the founding of Mighty Oaks Foundation. I've spoken to over 500,000 troops now. We've run recovery programs. We do about $8 million a year in free recovery programs. I'm at bases all over the world. We've gotten to do a lot. And my primary message to all veterans is, and first responders and everyone who's struggling with hopelessness is that as low as you may feel, right, what you feel in this moment is not a permanent situation, right? There's most of the times when we're in these dark moments, we feel like it's going to be this way forever. And that's just not true. It will not be that way forever. Not only can you find hope, not only can you find restoration, not only can you find new purpose again, but you could find yourself in a position to be part of the solution for others. But it takes some deliberate steps of our own, the willingness to admit our situation, the vulnerability to get help, and the surrender. And I believe the only real surrender is surrendering yourself to a relationship with the Creator, because you can never be who you were created to be without a relationship with the Creator. And I believe of all the things you can do to get well, there's nothing more impactful, when I've seen it firsthand in my life and the lives of thousands of others, there's nothing more impactful than aligning your life with a relationship with God and being the person you're created to be. And that's not evangelic pitch. That's just my professional and personal opinion from things I've seen firsthand from so many thousands of warriors who are struggling. That's where real hope and real restoration comes from.
That's a great concept and a great cause. But you talked about the concept of being on the X. Can you explain to us what it means and now how you get off the X?
Yeah, well, in the world of special operations and in combat, being on the X means you're on an ambush site. You're on a kill zone. In fact, we could just look back a week ago. We seen President Trump on that stage was on the X. He was in the kill zone. And if you've seen how the Secret Service responded, which, I can't give the Secret Service too many accolades because I don't think they did a great job. But you can see when they rushed up to him, their job was to get him off the X, to move him off the X. So in our job in the military, we have 2 rules about the X. Number 1 is you have to be able to recognize you're on the X. You got to know you're in a bad situation. You got to know you're in ambush. You got to know you're in a kill zone. And number 2 is simple. You have to get off the X. You got to move. And in life, we often combat or just everyday life, we find ourselves on the X. And those 2 simple rules apply. You have to be able to recognize your situation. You got to know you're on the X. If you're unaware or naive, you're just going to be beaten up or killed. You have to be able to recognize you're on the X. You got to know your situation. And then rule number 2, you have to get off the X. You got to move. And so many times in life, we find ourselves in bad situations, find ourselves on the X, and we choose to stay there. We don't identify our situation and we don't move. And so just like in combat and in life, those principles apply. And many times I've been in that situation in combat where I found myself on the X quickly and immediately we had to recognize our situation, and then we had to move off of it. In life, I found myself in the same situations as well. And, anytime I've chosen to stay there, it's almost cost me everything.
Well, life is making good choices. Now, Chad, you're an incredible man of God. You've seen him do so much in the lives of those you meet overseas and the veterans you work with. Can you explain why faith in God helps to bring healing and purpose to today's veterans? That's so important.
Look, if you see me on Fox News, I'm always bashing the VA in that. And in truth, they kind of deserve it. But the VA has really good physical programs for people's bodies that are burned and maimed, and they have great programs for TBI, traumatic brain injuries. So why do they still fail the veteran community, The reason they fail is because you could heal someone's body and you could heal someone's mind, but until you heal someone's soul, they're never truly going to be well. And the only way to really heal someone's soul is through a relationship with Jesus. And there's no shortcut to that, whether people share my faith or not. There's just no shortcut to that. PTSD, combat trauma, life trauma, these are spiritual wounds. And a spiritual wound requires a spiritual solution. And we always try to find shortcuts and other ways around. And, people do take medicine, medicate themselves, and they do yoga, and they try to find their inner peace and all this stuff they try to find. And it always falls short. But when a man or a woman makes a decision to step in their relationship with their Creator and be who they were created to be, that's where you see restoration. That's where you see hope. And that's where you see new purpose ignited. And that's what everybody that's struggling is searching for. And if for some reason they search everywhere else, I can't answer why. I did it myself. And at some point, hopefully in all of our lives, we come to the point to where we realize the only true solution is through a relationship with our Creator.
Well, I got to tell you, Chad, I'm a man who's closer to 88 than he is to 87. And I could agree with you more. I've seen God change people's lives where others could not do it. Now, the Mighty Oaks Foundation has helped countless veterans. What inspired you to start this organization? What is its primary purpose, and what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, 15 years ago when I fell on my face and a lot of people came around me to help me. And like I said earlier, the main catalyst for my help was the restoration of my relationship with Jesus and becoming a Christian. And through that, on the other side of that, God put a deep burden on my heart to pay it forward. And I didn't know if it was going to be one person, Lou. I didn't know if it was going to be thousands of people. I didn't know. I just knew that I needed to help someone else. And so when I went through that, I got up and I turned around and I helped the next guy. And then that guy turned around and helped the next guy. That guy helped the next guy, and so on and so forth, on and on, for a period of 15 years. And over 500,000 people later, we've restored individual lives, families, communities, and people. And we've made an impact in this nation, now around the world. And so this is the process, by the way, for those listening, of discipleship, which is what Jesus called us to do. And it's why it's so exponential. And so in 15 years, we have 4 things we do at Mighty Oaks. One is our resiliency program, where I've spoken to over 500,000 active duty troops on base around the world. And I do that regularly. The other is our recovery program. We take active duty service members, veterans, first responders, spouses, allied service members like our interpreters. We bring them to 5 different ranches around the country. We do about $8 million a year in programming. We pay for everything, including their travel. You get them that program in a week-long intensive, followed on by aftercare, and make sure that they have the ability to move forward. The third thing we do is we go to Washington, D.C., and we advocate for faith-based programs for our active duty service members and veterans. When President Trump was in office, I was appointed to be a chairman of the White House's faith-based coalition on Veterans Affairs, and I was able to be part of bringing executive order by the president to help bring faith-based programs back in to the veteran system. And the fourth thing we do is we take all those same things we do here in America. We use our alumni, guys who felt broken and no purpose, found purpose again, and want to pay it forward. We take them around the world to our allied partners and help them build the similar programs in their countries. And it's been an amazing blessing to be part of that, Lou, over the last 15 years, to watch God just take not just me, but all these guys that have come through Mighty Oaks and bring purpose back in their life and let them have a mission again and make an impact in the world and for the kingdom of heaven.
Well, this is not a political show, but I got to ask this political question. You served under 2 administrations, Biden and President Trump. Mm-hmm. Is there one administration who really helped you more than the other?
So I actually served under 5. I served under Bill Clinton, George Bush. I served under President Obama. I've served under President Trump, and now I'm very involved in the military under President Biden still. And I can tell you the most effective president, and this is not political, this is just facts. It's not a political pitch for President Trump. The most effective president in those 5 presidents, when it comes to our troops being effective on the battlefield, was President Trump. And this is the president that, by the way, has taken us out of wars, not put us into wars. And he was effective because of rules of engagement. The rules of engagement, the support he's given the troops, the finances he's given the troops, and allowing the military to do what the military was created to do. Eliminated ISIS.
I defeated ISIS with the greatest generals. I had a guy who was so great. I flew to Iraq, and I met the real generals, not these idiots that we deal with. And we knocked out, I defeated 100% of the ISIS caliphate. They said it would take 5 years. I did it in a matter of literally a few weeks. And we hit them hard. And he said, "So we're going to hit him here, we're going to hit him there, we're going to hit him here, there." And I said, "This guy's great. I like this guy." I was told it would take 5 years. That's why I went. I said, "How could it take 5 years? We have brand new fighters. We have the best planes, the best weapons, the best guns, the best bombs. How could it possibly take that long?"
Froze the Taliban to where the Taliban did not even wouldn't even attack a U.S. troop, and saved thousands of U.S. service members' lives. And I could say that in a pitch, but you can look at the numbers, the metrics of troops injured and troops killed, and the impact we had. And then immediately, when President Biden came in office, those rules of engagement changed back. Obama's was even worse. And then on the veterans care side, I mean, we had a VA approval rating that went from 40% to 90%, and now it's already back to below 40% under this administration. President Trump was the most effective president for our military troops. And when I served as a surrogate on the campaign, I didn't do it as a MAGA Republican or because I don't tie to any party. The reason I volunteered to serve as a surrogate on President Trump's campaign in 2020 for veterans policy is because it was clearly the most effective veteran policy for our national security in the care for our troops. And it was a no-brainer, and it was very easy to do because the policy spoke for itself.
Well, when I asked you that question, I had no idea where the answer would lead. But I'm glad I did because you expressed yourself eloquently. Now, the last question. The theme of my show is coaching America back to greatness. What do you believe needs to be done to restore the culture of this country? And you know what I mean by the culture, because so much of it has changed with immigration, with different beliefs and policies. What do we have to do to get back to the basic fundamentals?
Well, Lou, you appreciate my answer here because you're a coach. And a team can have all the best players. You got the best quarterback, you could have the best wide receiver, you can have all the best team. But if that team doesn't have a good coach to bring them together, to bring unity, to bring focus, to have a good strategy and plan, that team will never win. It doesn't matter how good the players are. We need a good coach. We need a good commander-in-chief to lead our military. We need a good leader of the free world in the White House that makes wise decisions, that makes decisions in the best interest of our nation, that makes us strong so we could help our partners around the world. But it has to start with America. We have to be strong first before we can share that strength with other parts of the world. Simply put, we need a good coach and we need a good leader. And right now, as we sit here, not only do we not even have a good leader, our Oval Office is vacant. I mean, we just had Russian fighter jets and Chinese bombers fly over U.S. soil. Why? Because we have the White House is vacant. We desperately need a leader in the White House, and it's people could say it's I'm pitching President Trump or whatever, but look, America is absent a leader, and when America doesn't have strong leadership, the world is a dangerous place. And you can look around, Republican and Democrat, left, right, conservative or liberal, you can look around and you cannot argue that the world is burning down in a dangerous place, and we need a strong leader in the White House. We need a coach.
Well, you make a very, very good point, but I really believe about leadership. And leadership is where you set high standards. Too many people in a leadership role, Chad, want to be well-liked and popular, so they lower the standards so everybody will be happy. That's not leadership. Leadership setting high standards and showing people how to reach them. And you sure have done a great job with what you've been doing. And congratulations on the success you've had. And may God continue to follow his word and to do his work. So thank you for joining us. God bless you.
God bless you, Lou. Thank you.
And he walks away after winning his 100th game as the head coach here at Notre Dame.
The reason I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was born in this country. It isn't what you have, it's what you're taught about the values of life.
We trying to save souls.
So there's a rule in life that said you're either growing or you're dying.
And like an old friend once said, we as Americans need to start winning again.
Everyone should ask this question. Am I willing to endure the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice it takes to be a champion?